the gentleman who's running against Mitt Romney in the Republican primary, or the convention process, I guess, in Utah, by the name of Trent Staggs. He's the mayor of Riverton, Utah. Mr. Staggs, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, it's a great honor because we're counting on you there, brother. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm a lifelong Utahn. I've lived in this state from elementary school to graduate school, I like to say, and raised my family here. I've operated several businesses. I have taken most recently a company public and listed on NASDAQ last year. It was in the energy space. And I've been in elected office for 10 years. I've served my community of Riverton, 4 on the council, 6 as mayor. And I just love this state. I love my family. And as you say, you know, Mark, that God gives us all a path and we need to choose to follow it. And it felt called to do this and try to really make a difference. I've been so overwhelmed the last 4 weeks since announced just how many people have reached out, the thousands of people that have come to our website at trentstaggs.com and asked to volunteer and how they can help put a true conservative in this seat because we need it.
You know, if we can't get a constitutional conservative out of Utah, we're in bad shape. And Mitt Romney seems to me like he still has his head in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a great state. It's a beautiful state. There are a lot of patriots there. But it's not Utah for purposes of politics. And tell me where you differ from Romney.
Well, I think very markedly. And that's it's funny you say that. I had somebody at a town hall just the other night that said, Massachusetts does not need a third senator. We need somebody that's truly going to represent Utah, represent its values, its residents. You know, Mitt Romney moved to Utah, as you said, and just a few years back, and he committed to fight for us. He said, if you elect me as your senator, I will fight for Utah every day. I'll put us on a pathway to a balanced budget. I will end illegal immigration. I'll stop federal spending and overreach, and I will appoint conservative justices to the court. Hasn't done that. He, in fact, has done just the opposite. He's fought for things that Utahns don't want. He's voted with Biden 60% of the time or more. Biden encouraged his candidacy back in 2018, and I think that's become abundantly clear why. I would be a constitutional conservative. I would try to emulate our other great senator, Mike Lee, and others like him in the Senate. I want smaller government. I want safer families. I want a stronger economy. And I spell that out on my website with policy briefs tied, you know, of several issues tied to each one of those overarching themes. And I think I've demonstrated that. I know how. As a mayor, I say I'm on the front lines of government overreach, whether it be federal, state, or county. I have fought back consistently. I've actually cut taxes in my community. I've cut spending. We've innovated to lower the cost of government and improve service levels at the same time. It can be done, but it requires somebody with this type of business, entrepreneurial approach. And we will push back on the regulatory state. We absolutely have to. The REINS Act, I'm a big supporter of. We cannot have these hundreds of federal agencies out there promulgating all of these rules.
And the REINS Act allows Congress to oversee these regulations, correct?
That's correct. To no longer abdicate its responsibility to this unseemly fourth branch of government that isn't supposed to exist. And so we know it's a multi-trillion-dollar drag on our economy, all these rules and regulations. It costs the average employer about $20,000 per employee. I'm out here in Utah talking to business owners. I've been a business owner myself. They say, Trent, we are too small to succeed. There's too big to fail, but we are too small to succeed. You've got to get the government off of our backs. And that's exactly what I intend to do, really going after a smaller government. That's what we need. That's what our founders envisioned, and we need to return back to those founding principles.
Don't you find it amazing when Mike Lee was running for re-election, and he was running against a phony, fraudulent independent and Democrat, that Romney refused to endorse him? Doesn't that tell you all you need to know?
I think it speaks volumes, yes. He was unwilling. I think it also speaks volumes when Romney takes the actions that he's taken. He clearly hasn't lived up to his promises. He did not at all fight for us on a balanced budget. In fact, just early in May, the first week in May, Senator Lee produced a letter to Biden and said, we are not going to raise the debt ceiling unless we get substantial spending cuts and budget reform. 42 other Republicans put their name on that letter, to include Mitch McConnell. But Mitt Romney's name was conspicuously absent. He would not even put his name on that letter. For someone who
So the senator from one of the most conservative states in America refused to sign a letter that just said to Biden, look, you either do some cutting here or we're not voting for that. He wouldn't even do that.
That's correct. That is how out of touch he is, or allowing, personal beefs or whatever to get in the way of good governance or actually governing with conservative principles, the things he said he would do. He has not done, and Utahns know it. They're wise to it. I'm traveling the state. His polling numbers have dropped 11 points since we've entered the race, and we have scores of endorsements from mayors and county commissioners. The Fraternal Order of Police came out early and endorsed our campaign. I'm hearing from people all across the state. Thank you. Thank you for standing up and being willing to serve. Get this person out of the Senate so that we can actually have a true conservative, another conservative representing Utah and the rest of this country. And it's not just in Utah. I've been humbled at how many donations we've received from people outside of this state. I think at last count, Mark, we've had over 40 donations come in representing individuals living across 42 or 43 states. It's been remarkable. Again, very, very humbling that we have true patriots, conservatives all across this country that want to see Mitt Romney out of office.
Romney's been a chameleon. He's been everything to everybody. I think he really hates Trump because Trump didn't choose him to be his Secretary of State, and he's never gotten over that. He neutralizes Mike Lee's votes all the time. He throws in with Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and the Democrats more than he does the conservatives. You can see he has a visceral hate for conservatives like Ted Cruz and others. He doesn't even want to be seen with them. And when we come back, Mayor, I want to explore further his views on issues versus your views on issues, because it's the distinction between the two that will win you that nomination and make you the next senator out of Utah. And God knows we need it. We cannot have states like Utah sending Democrats dressed up in country club Republican clothing, acting like they're actually interested in our concerns. We'll be right back. I'm talking to Trent Staggs, Staggs. If you'd like to help him, and I really encourage you to do it, it's TrentStaggs.com, TrentStaggs.com. My brothers and sisters in Utah, here's an opportunity. This man is stepping up to the plate. Let's put everything aside. He's a successful businessman, a successful local mayor. Exactly the kind of guy you want in the United States Senate to work with Mike Lee. Be nice to have Mike Lee as partnered with somebody who's actually going to support his efforts and the efforts of constitutionalists all over this country. Mitt Romney has deceived the people of Utah. He deceived to get elected. And I suspect he will use tens of millions of dollars, Trent Staggs, to try and use propaganda and other means, funded mostly out of Washington, big, massive donors, political action committees, to drown you. Now, has he said he's running for re-election?
Their camp has been a little coy. He has filed his paperwork with the FEC, but they have not formally announced. But we have to assume that he is running. And the rumor and the talk amongst people here in the state is that there's a good likelihood that he will. And so we want to be able to step up again, differentiate ourselves, show people that there is an alternative. And we've done just that.
I suspect he wants to freeze the state of play here to make it harder for people to raise money to defeat him. Part of the tactics, I guess.
You're absolutely right.
So how does it look there? I mean, I don't know about polling and everything else. Does he have huge negatives in Utah, or what's the deal?
He does, and nationally as well. He does have the establishment, though. You are spot on that the establishment money is going to be there. If he chooses to run again, and he will use everything he can to try to change that. But I think his name ID is so high, and people have their opinions largely baked with respect to Mitt Romney, that he can spend millions. And I don't know, Mark, if it's really going to change. I would hope not the needle much. His polling data is down about 11 points since we announced. He's only in the 40s amongst all Utah registered voters, which includes Democrats, and we know he has a 75% plus approval rating with Democrats. And I think he's only about 30% or so amongst Republicans, particularly Republican primary voters here in the state. And as we get out there and they recognize that they do have a true conservative, somebody who's demonstrated that in like 10 years in elected office here, they can go back and take a look at fighting big government every step of the way, that is the person they want to have represent them in the United States Senate.
What's going to happen is Mitch McConnell raises literally hundreds of millions of dollars from special interests, dark money, billionaires in and around Washington who get favors from him on legislation, on amendments, on budget bills, and all the rest. And he's used that over the decades to empower himself and to be 15 years as the leader there. And he will spend money to try and destroy you, not to build up Romney. Romney is a soldier for McConnell. He'll vote for McConnell for majority leader every time, or minority leader, Republican leader. This is what he does. And he will do everything he can. So when you say, I'm the real conservative, that scares Mitch McConnell. So all over the country, McConnell has raised money to destroy Republicans. And when he fails, or we don't win the seat, he blames conservatives. This is his shtick. So I'm just warning you, you're not only going to have to take on the Democrats and the organized left, you're not only going to have to take on the Romney campaign, you're going to have to take on Washington and McConnell, who will slash you, stab you, try to decapitate you from the back. It is vicious and vile what he does to other candidates. I'm just giving you a heads up.
And isn't that sad? Isn't that sad that that's the state of play in our country today? And that is the reason why too few people, good people, true conservatives, are willing to step up. I've had people here tell me that too. They say they're praying for me. My wife is just fantastic. She's been so incredibly supportive. But Mark, this is a big reason why I'm doing this. People say you've got to be nuts. $170,000 a year, whatever. You got to maintain 2 residences. Trent, we know your background. Why on earth would you do that? Your life becomes a fishbowl. You become a target. Look, I've got a 13-year-old son and 11-year-old daughter. I care about them deeply. I am so concerned about the country that they are going to inherit. You've nailed it in your segments about how the Democrat Party hates America. And I have just seen such fundamental transformation in the last few years with this administration. It really rocks me to my core, and why everything else, things are going to be thrown my way for sure, but we've got to move on. We've got to try. I'm in a position, I've been given, our family's been blessed. We're in a position to actually do this and to make a run full time for the next, the next year plus to get this done. And that's what we're going to do.
Well, let me say this. I would like to endorse you. I think you're a very important candidate, and I think you are very solid. I've looked at your background. I've spoken to a few people. We also know that Romney is a disaster. He's a saboteur. And if we're ever going to take this country back through multiple channels, including the electoral channel, we've got to nominate people like you out of a state like Utah. And I would just ask all my friends and brothers and sisters, fellow patriots in Utah, you really got to step up on this one. And all over the country, you're able to contribute to this campaign. It's Trent Staggs. That's STAGGS.com. When you're online, any of my social sites, we will post to this. We will link to it. And what he's going to need, frankly, is money, because Romney's going to raise a ton of it. McConnell's going to do everything he can to protect Romney because he's a liberal, and that's what McConnell does. And we got to help, as Biden would say, from the bottom up, middle out. I don't know what he means, but we need to do it. So, Trent Staggs, I want to thank you for coming on, and we're going to want to have you back. So is it a convention first? Isn't that the way Utah works?
It is, but first, Mark, that's incredible. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that endorsement.
My pleasure.
The petition to have your listeners come there to that site. Yes, we have a caucus convention system. It's in March as the neighborhood caucus. I think it'll be late April when we have our state convention. We are going that route. I'm committed to it. Unfortunately, we had some change in 2014 in Utah where people can just gather signatures and put their name on the ballot, on a primary ballot, and force it that way. I think it's very unfortunate. It's really, really changed the dynamic here in the state. You know, when Mike Lee was elected back in 2010, he went through that caucus convention system and was able to upset a three-term incumbent. And
that's
now
because they don't want the base of the party making the decision. And they want to bring all these outsiders in, and they want to have petitions and do all the rest of that stuff. And Mike Lee was able to win because he reached out to the core of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party said enough is enough when it came to Bennett. I remember I was involved helping him to some extent, to the extent you can with a convention system. I am all for it, but you're right. They're chipping away at that system because they want to chip away at guys like you, right?
They do. And, a guy like Romney, he'll just buy his way on the ballot. He'll go out and collect the 30,000 signatures or so that are required in a statewide race here of 3.2 million people. And he hasn't even shown up. He hasn't even bothered to show up to our state GOP conventions, the last few. I'm a state delegate myself, and it's just unfortunate that won't even attend that.
It's amazing when you're despised by your own party, and in return, you despise them. And when you have a so-called Republican leader in the Senate like Mitch McConnell, who reaches in the states he doesn't even go to, he has nothing to do with, whether it's Alaska or any other state in this country. And then when the Republicans lose after he smears the hell out of the conservative candidate, and then he says, well, that's Trump's fault. And he did before. It was the Tea Party's fault in 2010. It's always somebody else's fault when it comes to that guy. It is bad. And a guy like you, a family man, a man of faith, a successful businessman, a small-town mayor, that is what Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is all about, or in this case, hopefully, Mr. Staggs goes to Washington. I want to thank you, my friend, and we will definitely have you back before the convention or the primary.
Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that.
All right, you got it. Trent Staggs. Sounds like just a decent guy, doesn't he? The kind of guy that Mitch McConnell will try to destroy with all his surrogates, his dark money, his billionaire buddies, his businesses, Chamber of No Commerce, all the rest of it. I'm sick and tired of it.